What's up, everybody? I am joined today with Josh from Wicked Fire Pizza, and I am excited to have him. This is another one of my pizza pals. Josh, what's good, though?
What's up, buddy? I have to start off. I promised my son I'd start off with saying I'm on with my boy Idrift. So
Hey!
we get a kick out of that, buddy. Listen, I have two things for what's good, though, man. And I've listened to every episode, and I wanted to say two things. One being, what's good, though, is something that anybody can enjoy. It could be bad pizza, it could be good pizza, it could be that 2 a.m. after being out pizza, or it could be that special ferment after 2 day pizza, right? But that's what's good pizza, man, for sure. The second thing I'd be remiss if I didn't say is you're what's good, though, brother. You do so much for this pizza community, and just bringing in everyone from people that have been doing this for 25 years, 30 years, 50 years, people that have been doing this for 6 months, man. You are the collective that bring us all together and allow us to grow from a business perspective and also from a personal perspective. So you're good, though.
Yo, thank you. Such a thoughtful answer. And really, I love what I do, and I love having the opportunity to let people shine on the show. You know what? 6 months, 20 months, everyone has something to learn from that guest. And so really, it's fun doing what I do. So thank you.
Of course.
On that note, the first part of your answer, I feel like 2 a.m. pizza doesn't get enough love on the
Right?
show.
Right?
But the reality is so many of us love it.
It's so true. I mean, how many of us, we all get into this for various reasons, right? I mean, for me, I can remember my mom was in fine dining. She worked a lot. She worked a lot of hours, really long hours. She was in a fine dining restaurant every single day. But typically there was that one day a week where she was off, and we would go to our local pizzeria and we'd get, some pizzas and bring them home. Right. And it wasn't mind blowing pizza, but it was my childhood pizza. Right. And I think so many of us, we try to get in the same categories as the John Arenas of the world, the Tony G's of the world, right? Lars. But there's so many of us that grew up on crap pizza or that 2 a.m. pizza, right? And I'll tell you that a big part of when I wanted to get into pizza is I wanted to relive my childhood for a minute. But then I'm like, do I really want to make 2 a.m. pizza? But I enjoy 2 a.m. pizza, man. And
Fair.
even, I'll tell you, I consider my pizza kind of artisan in the way of, it's pizza, right? But I do it with my own hands. But I still love that other local corner stop pizza place when I'm spent and I work, 15 hours in the day and I sold my own 300 dough balls. I still kind of like sometimes to be like, hey, hun, order that pizza from down the street so that we can munch on it after, watching a movie or whatever. You know what I mean?
I hear you. Oh my goodness, loud and clear. And I think now is a perfect time to let me and, the listeners know, what is it that you're making?
I wanted to do a couple of things, right? I love the big vision of what I wanted to do from a pizza standpoint is when I moved up here to Massachusetts 13 years ago, coming from New Jersey, being born and raised in South Jersey, being very close to Philadelphia, we had some damn good pizzas, man. And when I moved here, one of the things I knew I missed right away was pizza. There's not a lot of great pizza places up here. The style's a little bit different. There's not a lot of fermentation to the dough. It's more of a Greek style type pizza, which is good in its own sense. The South Shore bar pie is very popular in this area, which is a very good pizza as well. It's just not my favorite style of pizza.
Sure.
So when I started experimenting and doing what I wanted to do, I knew I loved the fluffiness of a Neapolitan style pizza, but I don't like the soft, ooey gooey middle of a Neapolitan pizza. And I also liked the stiffness and what I was used to in a New York style, or a New York slice. So I wanted to do everything I could to combine those two to come up with a neo-American style type blend of pizza. Um, the other thing that I really enjoy is I really enjoy wood fire. I've cooked in gas, I've cooked on a flat deck, I've cooked in a wood, coal, you name it. But I really, not only do I think the pizzas taste better in wood fired, but it almost adds an ambiance or a show. And I knew what I wanted to do is I wanted to take pizza on the road, and I wanted to be, the prominent caterer for pizza in the area. And I knew that if I had a wood fired oven, either in a pizza truck or a trailer, whatever it may be, I knew it had to be wood fired. So combining all of those things to make a dough that can withstand the heat of whatever temperature I want to have it at, um, and also be able to have the ambiance or show at the same time, that was my goal. So what I kind of came up with it's a lower hydration. I run my hydration depending on the weather, anywhere around 63 to 65% hydration, and then it's a combo. I use I truth be told, I was using up to this point. I was using a combination of Caputo and King Arthur. I'm actually slowly but surely getting rid of the Caputo, and I'm really processing some of these other King Arthur flours, and I'm blending them, which has made such a difference, man. Caputo is a great flour, don't get me wrong. But when they're taking the wheat from the United States and Canada, bringing it over to Italy, processing it, and then sending it back to us at 4 or 5 times the cost, I'm like, something's got to give here, bud. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like how you said, 63, 65% hydration, depending on the weather. That is so key because everyone's, especially newer pizza makers, they're sticking to one hydration and they're wondering why they're fluctuating with their dough so much. I love that you give a range. What temperature are you cooking around with that range of hydration?
The sweet spot for us to cook our pizzas in is anywhere from 750 to that 800 range. I can cook higher. We can rock higher. The way my trailer is set up, we have an 18-foot trailer that I have an oven that was imported from Italy. We brought the oven over. My guy from Tuscany Fire in Connecticut, the way he describes it, he's like, listen, you could do 100 pizzas an hour. You could have a crew of 50, 60, people. There's some people that run with 5 people in a trailer. There's some people that run with 1 person in a trailer. What you have to do is you have to find your sweet spot. And then at that point, it's not about just making the pizza. It's about being able to reproduce that while you have 25, 30 people in line and getting that consistent product with that consistent temperature with the saturation in the stone to be able to respond to the amount of pressure you're putting on it to repeat that process over and over and over again. And I had no idea what the hell he was talking about at first. I'll be honest. I'm like, dude, come on. I'm going to light a fire, right? I had my first go round. I had a fire within a pizza trailer that a former business partner and I bought from a college kid in Maine. And we were like, you know what? We're going to kick ass. We're going to start this company. We're going to do pizzas on the side. And we were like, let's drive up. We took my wife's minivan and we drove it up. We met him in New Hampshire. And here comes this giant trailer with this oven on top of it. And I go to my buddy, I go, how the hell are we getting this thing home? And he goes, well, we're going to hook it up to your wife's minivan. I go, dude, I don't know if that's going to work. And we did, right? We're like, we went to the auto parts store. We got a hitch. We hooked it up. I had no freaking clue what I was doing.
Oh my goodness.
But we bring it home. We set it up. We start making pizzas that were a disaster. And I'm just like, awesome. We can do this. But then you get into the business of, people are going to start paying you money. People are going to pay you money to make them pizza. They spend all day at work doing whatever, nurses, whatever, teachers, hard-earned money. Then they're going to stand in your line and they're going to want the same product that you've taken and you've posted all over Instagram or all over Facebook for these pizzas that it's probably, my 15th or 16th photo because I got to make sure it's the perfect shot and the perfect spectrum. And I'm being tasked with doing that over and over and over and over and over again.
Oh yeah.
So honestly, to know about how to saturate your oven with heat, to make sure, my first event, I can remember it like it was yesterday, man. My first event, we show up to this place. We partner with this local liquor store and we're like, we're going there. We're going to kick ass. We're going to sell, a million pizzas. And we made like 100 dough balls. And honest to God, we get there, we build the fire in the trailer. We got there an hour early and I'm like, let's go. And my buddy who was my partner at the time, he goes, the oven's not hot enough. I'm like, nah, man, it's been going for an hour. Let's rock. And he goes, buddy, like it's not hot. And I go, nah, it'll be fine. Dude, it literally took us like 2.5 hours, 3 hours to heat that damn oven up.
Yikes.
And then those are the little things, right? Like now this was like 2015, 2016. Now there's books, there's everything to tell you, what to do. This is how you build a teepee in the oven. This is how you want to fire your oven. I had no idea there was moisture in the oven that I had to get out. I had no idea. So to learn those things, to understand that in order to do this repetitively, successfully, you have to have certain procedures and processes in place. It was a really kind of a wake-up call, man. Now we got it down. Now that I've cooked, 10,000 pizzas, now I'm like, okay, I got this down. I know the oven takes 2.5 to 3 hours to heat to where I want it. So that when I throw the first pizza on or I throw the 200th pizza on, the oven's going to react similar, in that same way.
That's so interesting. Yeah. I was unfamiliar to the concept of saturating my oven or any oven up until recently, maybe just a few months ago. I did a pop-up in Oregon. They started the oven last night or the night before just to kind of get it going. And that to me was like, what? You started the fire last night? And when I got there that morning, I put my hand on the oven. It was already hot. That was cool.
It's a real deal, man. I mean, and I think the development of how you prep and process, again, it's a lot. I used to throw parties all the time in my house. We had a huge friend group, right, in New Jersey and here in Massachusetts. I mean, people would come over and I love to entertain. So I'd be cooking everything. And again, there is a huge difference between being able to cook for, 20 people in your house and it's free than having a line of 50 people being like, okay, where's my pizza? And that first person in line that sees that pizza expects that same look, that same char, that same cornichon. They expect that whether you're first in line or whether you're 200th in line. They expect that same repetitive result. I can remember when I first started doing this, there's a local place that does wood-fired everything. They cook everything. He's a great chef, and he does everything wood-fired. He also does pizzas wood-fired. So after this catastrophe that I had with this trailer, my wife was like, why don't you go down and talk to him and get
Great
some
advice.
insight? And I'm like, why didn't you suggest that? Not that I would have listened. I probably wouldn't have listened, but why didn't you suggest that 2 weeks ago? So I go talk to him, right? And I'm like, hey, I'm doing this wood fire thing on the side for pizza. I've been to your establishment. It's amazing. Can you just take me through a couple steps of what you do? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Great guy. And I'm like, well, let's start with the oven. Right. You have a similar wood fire type oven. It's his oven has been there for literally like 50, 60 years. And I'm like, what time do you start your oven in the morning? And he just starts laughing. He just breaks out in laughter. And I'm like, okay, well, that's funny. And he goes, Josh, we don't just start our oven in the morning. He goes, we never stop feeding our oven. Our oven is never off. He goes, even on vacation, we constantly have somebody come in and either put coal in or they're feeding it wood to keep the oven to temperature. When we get ready for service, about 35 to 45 minutes to service, we stoke it and bring it up to flame, but the oven is always the temperature. So I go to him, I go, so it probably was a bad idea for me to try to start my oven about an hour before service. And he starts laughing. He goes, how'd that work out for you? And I go, yeah, that's something I don't want to talk about. But it's those things, man.
That's
it's
so
those
real.
trial and error things.
What are your best tips or suggestions for remaining consistent throughout your entire service? Because for someone like me, I may be, cooking for 20 people. They're still all over the place. What are your suggestions?
So here's the thing. It's first and foremost, you don't want your product to suffer, right? People that come and buy your product, or whether it be a party or whether it be, somebody's waiting in line, they're coming for you, right? And people have a tendency to understand if you communicate. I'll give you a perfect example. We did an event this past summer, and there was probably about 250 people there. It was a huge event. And it got to the point probably around 120, 130 dough ball that the oven floor, my pizzas were cooking perfectly. The floor of the oven was just not to temperature at all. It just dropped. As you continue to bake on these ovens, it's pulling up the heat. It's pulling the temperature out. So I'm lucky enough that my cousin works with me. He does what we call the front of the house in the trailer. He takes the money. He's the customer, we call him the customer rep. He's basically talking to everybody, holding their hand through the process, making sure they're happy. He's the face. I'm on the side, making the pizzas, firing the pizzas, getting them out of the oven, communicating where I can. But I turn to him and I go, Chris, we got to pause. I can't do another pizza for about another 10 minutes. He looks at me, he laughs. He goes, Josh, there's a line of 100 people. I go, I get it, but I would much rather them understand and communicate to them that I need 10 minutes because I need to get the oven back up to speed than serve undercooked pizzas that aren't of my brand, right? This is my livelihood, right? This is something I left a 6-figure job to start my own company. And the one thing I'll tell you, probably Lars was the first person to tell me this. You're not going to please everybody. You're going to try like hell, and you're not going to please everybody. Being in customer service and sales as long as I have, my goal has always been to please everybody. So knowing that if I serve you a product at pizza 130 and it's not the temperature, and I don't want to sacrifice my product. So I would probably say to everyone that's out there, you yourself, don't sacrifice your product just because somebody's in your face. Or the other thing is this, you get it all the time. I'm sure your friends and family have said the same thing. Hey, have you ever tried this on a pizza or this or that? Or don't you think you should do it a little bit this way? Or, you know what I mean? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. You're right. I'm not doing it that way, but thank you so much for your feedback and advice. I honestly, I have no problem telling somebody, listen, thank you so much for trying my pizza. If there's an issue, please tell me and let me correct it. Don't run to social media. Don't jump on the Instagram or the Facebook or our local community group. Come to me. If your pizza isn't the way you expect it to be, if I can change it and it's within my realm of changing things, I'll do it 100 times over, man. I'll do it 100 times over.
That's spot on. I hate seeing all those negative comments on Yelp and Facebook and all that stuff. There's just really no room. People who take the time and energy to do all that stuff really don't have lives. I'm just going to be so upfront and honest. Like, y'all got better things to do with your lives. I was laughing so hard when you said, how about you do this or add this? Because I have had people say that to me. And I will say, I'll just counter back and say, some of the advice has been good.
Absolutely.
And so I just don't want people listening thinking oh yeah, deny everyone, right? Their opinion, but definitely take it in and, make some considerations. I think for things like crust styles and maybe the sauce that you're committed to, that may not change. But topping combinations, someone told me to add grilled onions on my blueberry goat cheese and walnut pie, and I was like, that actually sounds pretty freaking good. And so things like that, just filter, have a filter and figure it out. While we're on the topic, I just want to know, how are you getting customers? Because it seems like people are loving the product. It seems like people are showing out at like unbearable temperatures. They're coming out for you. You're doing something right. What's the secret sauce, if you have, any idea?
Yeah. So I'm trying to produce a sustainable product that I'm using local or fresh ingredients where I can. I'm using good flour. I'm using good mozzarella. I'm using fresh product. I'm trying to be innovative with some of my combinations on things and not just get people the same ordinary pepperoni pizza, right? I'm trying to be inventive in what I'm doing. I'm trying to do something that isn't on every street corner. But I think a lot of it is the taste, right? I've spent a lot of time in my dough development and my fermentation. My dough tastes different at hour 36 than it does at hour 26. My dough tastes different on day 5 than it does on day 3. I use more yeast in the winter than I use in the summer. You know what I mean? And trying to get those same things, knowing all of that, trying to get that same consistent product as much as I can for people to then enjoy has kind of been my secret sauce. Although there's been a million suggestions, this combination, that combination, add this to your sauce. I'd like a sweeter sauce. I like a drier sauce. I like more herbs in my sauce. All that's great. The bottom line, what I try to do with myself is I try to put out a product that I would spend my money on. Being from where I'm from, like I said, in South Jersey, coming up here, I had a vision in my head for what I wanted the pizza to taste and be like. And I'm close. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there, and I'm happy with the product of what and how I've developed that product. And I think, in getting the messages out there and getting the local community has been amazing. Amazing. My first pop-up I did on February 23rd of last year. I sold out, first time ever. I sold out 100 pizzas in less than 2 hours. There was snow on the ground. It was windy, and it was just because our local community took hold of it. Now I'm to the point where not only is my local community taking hold of it, but they feel ownership in it as well, which I think is amazing, right? They're like, oh, you're having a pop-up here, and they're posting it everywhere. They're taking my single post that my social media is not huge. They're taking my single post and I'm seeing it shared 40 times, 45 times to all different communities. It's consistent in that. And then the other thing is Lars, I keep going back to Lars, but he's so knowledgeable. I know he's a good buddy of yours as well. He's a great dude. And I said to him very early on, I'm like, Lars, what is the key, dude? What's the key to success, man? And I'll be honest with you. He was like, just show up the next day. And I'm like, okay. He's like, no, dude, trust me. Just show up. You're going to have a down day. You're going to have a day that kicks your ass. You're going to have a day where your dough doesn't look right. You're going to have a day where your ingredients run out, blah, blah, blah. Show up the next day and make it and make dough again, and just show up and sell and show your face, whether it's 10 degrees outside or 100 degrees outside. Show up and sell your product and people will come.
Oh, I love that. One of my biggest things is just staying committed, being prepared for the long journey ahead of you. Some people haven't started that journey yet, or some people have started multiple journeys. I feel like I found my journey, and it's podcasting and it's pizza. And it's like, I'm putting it out there. I'm ready for the long haul, And
yeah,
I think so many, thank you. And I feel like so many people give up too early, too soon. And so that is just a great freaking reminder.
That to me is the biggest thing, man. If you don't show passion in what you do or who you are or how you are, my wife says it all the time. It's a blessing and a curse, but I wake up going 100 miles an hour and I close my eyes going 100 miles an hour, and it's everything else in between is like, okay, what I knock over now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that you're going in. And I think that's also part of the reason why you have so much local success, and, people are picking up your story over at the Boston Globe, is that you have this relatable story. It's like, oh my goodness, this dude dropped a significant solid income and pursued his passion for pizza. I mean, who doesn't love this idea? And like, people are just down with that. And so I think, you should talk a little bit more about what you were doing, how you were feeling leaving that job, and how you made that kind of scary jump.
Yeah, no, for sure. I have to say, it's scary. It's still scary. I still sit here today and I'm like, okay, it's literally been a year tomorrow that I picked up my trailer, a year tomorrow. And I will tell you that a lot of it started with support. And I had a vision, as we all do. We all either get into jobs or scenarios and situations where, it may be the greatest in the world, but there's some things we want to tweak, or it may not be exactly how we want it, but we're comfortable in it, whether that's life, family, jobs, whatever it may be. And at some point in time, you have to make a decision as to, am I going to look back on my life or this situation and say, damn it, I should have did it differently? Or, am I going to be the one in my case where, I traveled 3 or 4 times a week. I was on airplanes. I was in airports. I was driving, 300, 400 miles every other day. And it was one of those things where I was a nut as far as what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in business for myself. I knew I loved pizza. I wasn't 100% sold on that I wanted to do pizza, but I knew I wanted to do something in food. And I was one of those nuts that I couldn't get enough information. I was lucky enough to come on come across your podcast and listen to all the great guests that you had and their passion and their, falls and their successes. And I was like, shit, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And then I get my check in the mail, or I get the reminder of, well, shit, you have a family of 4 to support, my wife is not going to be real happy with me if I leave my job and be like, hey, babe, I got this great vision. Here I am. I have no idea how much it's going to cost or what I'm going to make a week, but this is my vision.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'll tell you that I hem and hawed for many years. I took one of the things I will definitely say is I'm definitely an overthinker. I feel like I have to gain all of this knowledge, and I'll tell you, it probably starts because of the way I was raised and growing up as a kid in the area I was raised in, and I always felt like I was a fighter. I always felt like I had to fight for something, and I was never. I have a double-edged sword. I have all the confidence in the world. But I'm also extremely not confident in certain things, and I'm like, well, shit, I know I can do this, but can I really? You know what I mean? And it was just one of those things where through self-reflection, through seeing the successes and failures of other people that have already walked in my footsteps, and knowing, I'll say it this way. When I really started thinking about doing this, originally, I was like, you know what, we're going to do it part-time. I'm going to do it on the weekends when I get home. I had a buddy who was very interested in doing something like this as well. We just started talking about it. And then all of a sudden he was like, yep, I just withdrew from my 401k and we're going to buy a pizza oven this weekend. I was like, whoa, what? He was like, dude, I'm tired of talking about it. He was like, and I was like, well, listen, I got 4 kids. I got a wife. I don't have the money in savings to give you towards it. He goes, nope, we're doing this. And I'm like, okay. So then I go on like the pizzamaking.com and I go on all these different sites and I'm like, yeah, I can do this. And then I start researching and I'm like, how the hell am I going to do this? Like, this is eye-opening, mind-blowing. So we did it for a short time. We did it for one full season part-time. And, you know, we had different visions, him and I. And I, you know, like I said earlier, I'm a fighter. I'm very passionate about certain things. And one of the things I always have to look in the mirror at myself around is other people's opinions matter for certain things. And Josh, you don't have all the answers for everything. And I have to be, you know, willing to take in other people's opinions, work ethics, things like that, that aren't mine, that aren't, you know, not everybody's waking up at 5 a.m. and going to bed at 2 a.m. and not sleeping because, you know, our dough boxes aren't cleaned the way they should be cleaned, or our dough's not prepped the way, you know what I mean? Not everybody's like that. And that's okay. So we parted ways, and it was a great learning experience. It was a great friendship that we had. And he got a promotion at work. I got a promotion at work. And I'm like, okay, I'm done the pizza game. I tried it. At least I tried it. And then I went back to work full time and started traveling more and doing all these other things. And I still had that thing in my ear. Like, what are you doing? You know, you love managing people. You love talking to physicians. You love presenting to people. I have no problem with any of that. You know, I could get in front of a board meeting and talk to the CEO of, you know, AmeriHealth Group and not flinch in the world. Perfectly fine. But yet, what would keep me up at night sweating was, well, I need my dough ball to be able to stretch to 14 inches. And I don't know exactly the right amount. You know what I mean? And I'm like, what the hell am I doing to myself? So there was this bug in my ear of, you know what, Josh, stop working for somebody else and working for their dream. Pause, stop, figure out how to live your dream and work for yourself and build what you want to build, instead of working for everybody else. And I had this guy that worked with me, one of my best friends to this day, and we worked for the same pharmaceutical company, and he was my equal. And he always used to say, every time we were together, every conference call, the 4 or 5 times we talked during the week, he'd call me up and be like, so when are you living your dream? When are you going to work for you? When are you going to do what you want to do? And I'm like, dude, get out of my head. Like, stop pushing me, get out of my head. And he's like, no, Josh, he goes, when you have passion and you talk about something as much as you do, you got to be able to take the leap and the jump to do it. And I'll be honest with you, it wasn't until the pandemic hit that I really was like, I got to think on my feet here, because what I was doing and the company I was doing it with is going to go away. You know, right? Like, we can't do the same model and the same thing as how we were doing it. So we're going to have to transition. And part of that transition is, do I want to continue to do that? Do I want to continue to be on a plane 3 or 4 times a week? Do I want to continue to travel? And the answer was no. The answer was, I want to work for myself. So I'll never forget it. My wife, we have this big meeting at work, and they're like, hey, listen, we're going to downsize your team. We love you. We love your group, but we're going to downsize. And I'm like, well, am I safe? And they're like, yeah, you're good. Don't worry. But we have to do something with your team. So I come home, I talk to my wife, and my wife's like, live your dream. She was like, you've supported us for as long as you have. Live your dream. Do you. You'll be successful. Do you. And that was the first time ever that I really was like, oh crap, she supports me. Like, why can't I do this? And that's what got the ball rolling. So I put the time, I put all of those podcasts, all of those books I read, all of that instruction that I took off the internet. I took all of that and I put everything into this company. And I was like, you know what? We're going to make this work. We're going to roll with it. And that's kind of where, once I had that support from my wife, I had the support from my friends already being like, dude, you're fine. You're going to make it. It was just looking in the mirror, knowing that not only was I going to put the work in and be successful, but my product for what I was going to do was successful enough to put out there. That's kind of where it started.
Okay. So that is huge. I mean, just having that coworker support telling you, kind of planting the seeds in you, or like watering the seeds? You planted the seed yourself a while back. You loved food. You had this passion for food. You were doing pizza already. And then you had people kind of helping nourish that seed and helping it grow. And then that final person that kind of, tipped it over for you was your wife. Like, was there any other conversation after the whole "I believe in you"? Was there anything else going on in that discussion?
For sure, for sure. It was one of those things where she supported me, and she knew that whatever I have this, probably a lot of people do, but we joke about it. For me, I see something and I'm like, oh, bird, and oh, okay, something else, and I'm like, well, shit, I can do that. And then I do it, and then I'm like, I'm good. I don't really want to do that anymore. I wanted to be a photographer. I wanted to get into photography. I love taking pictures. So I go out and buy the camera. I go out and do, I get this online course. I do it, and I'm gung ho, 24 hours a day. That lasted 10 days. You know what I mean? It's like, so she said to me, if you do this, you have to be certain in your heart and soul that this is what you're going to do, because this is going to be your livelihood. This is going to be our support. This is going to pay our mortgage. And the one thing she said is, if you know that this is what you want to do, then do it. If you need more time to figure out and get it in your head to where you're going to be successful, then take a little bit more time. But know that you don't want to be here a year from now, still kicking the tires, going, shit, I should have done that. Make a decision and figure out whether it's going to be economically fit for our family, or maybe you need to do it on the side, or maybe you can still do something else. Maybe you can still do this whole sales and marketing thing and do this on the side. And I was at the point, where I was so confident. It was almost like those were the words I needed to hear. You know what I mean? I had done the research. I had kicked the tires with doing it part-time, but I almost needed to hear it from her that, listen, I got you. I got you. There's going to be some rough patches. We're not going to make the same money we did, but we're going to be okay. So we have to eat ramen and, your messed up dough for the next, however many years a month. If we have to taste test dough, whatever, we'll figure it out. But it was kind of that support of, you got this. Just put your heart into it. And it's kind of like the if you build it, they will come moment. You know what I mean?
That, yeah, I do. Like, it's like, as soon as you get that blessing and you're off to the races, you're going to build it and hope for the best. I guess my one question though is like, and let me know if this isn't something that you're okay to talk about, but are you a single household family? You have 4 kids, you got a mortgage, as you mentioned, and they're growing kids. They're not like old kids. You told me you had a 10-year-old son, and I'm just like, cool. How are the finances at home for you to just be able to like kind of risk it all on a business?
So on total transparency, right? So I have 4 kids. My oldest daughter's 17. My youngest daughter's 9, 3 girls and a boy. And I still get choked up a little bit when I think about it. I through everything in my life, the way I grew up, where I grew up, not really clicking in school, not really knowing what I wanted to do, what my niche was. I dropped out of high school at 15. I started working full time. I went into a restaurant, loved it, but I wasn't making the money I needed to at 15. Told my mom I'm out, and I moved out. I got my own apartment at 16. I went into construction. All of these things I did. Working for 20 plus years, supporting my family, traveling, doing all these great things that people grow up thinking they want to do. People go to college to be and do what I did. It wasn't until my son, my daughters, my wife, as I'm preparing myself to do this, and I'm prepping the dough, and I'm making the ingredients, and I'm building what my menu is going to be. It wasn't until they all collectively looked at me and said, "You really like what you do. Like we've never have seen this side of you. You know, you are really liking what you're doing." And I haven't even begun to really do anything yet, but prep and game plan in my mind with what I'm going to do. It wasn't until then that I was like, shit, there's something to be said for not just going to work and clocking in from 9 to 5 or getting on an airplane at 7 a.m. and coming home at 9 o'clock. Was I successful at that? Absolutely. Was it something that I enjoyed? Absolutely. I love helping people. I love helping, living the life that I was doing and who I was doing it for. The companies I've worked were fantastic, really great companies, great managers, great bosses. But it wasn't that I'm going to put my head on my pillow tonight and be comfortable and confident in what I'm doing. Now, from a financial standpoint, there's still bumps in the road, man. I'll tell you that we were really successful this year, more than I thought we'd be from a monetary perspective, right? We kicked ass, man. I mean, I didn't start booking catering events until the end of February, and we had a stellar year, catering wise. But then it's like, okay, shit, it's November. I have no more catering gigs. That money quickly starts going out in your savings account. Yeah. I'm like, oh shit. Well, now I need to change direction here. Now I need to reflect and do more pop-ups, or how am I going to sustain doing what I'm doing? So I guess the point I'm trying to make is there's always a checklist in your mind of what it's going to take to be successful in anything you do, but you can't ever fall back on your heels and be like, I got it. You have to be prepared. And part of this growing and talking and being the support that I have, amongst my family, is figuring out how to sustain and do this consistently when the catering's not there consistently, or when the pop-ups aren't there consistently. So there's still that tight of, all right, well, we can't do everything or go out to dinner or, take all these vacations. We have to minimize our spending a little bit. We have to be careful because, we get a snowstorm where, we have 12 inches of snow on the ground for a couple of days or a couple of weeks. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not making any money. I can't pull the trailer out in that type of snow or conditions. I'd be crazy. So there's still that learning, that game planning of, the consistency. And a lot of that I think will continue to come over time. But I will say, for the first time in my life, I have not necessarily counted the money or counted the paycheck that was coming in. I took into consideration the love and passion that I have for what I'm doing, and know that although it may not be as much money as I was making, just that money that I'm making that's able to support me and my family, and the happiness that I feel from it, and knowing that I'm still making a product and people are buying a product that I'm making with my two hands, trumps any amount of money I could ever make.
That's amazing. I mean, I hear a lot, like, oh, we don't get into pizza to get rich or anything like that. And I definitely, support that idea. And I also think, like, it is still possible to build a successful business and, have enough, more than enough even. And I think it's what you hit on, is that when you start this business, it's important to kind of be frugal and prepare for the upticks and downturns and just the whole seasonality of this business, especially the wood-fired business, right? Especially the mobile catering business. And I think that's just a solid point. It's like, go into it, be prepared. You may have to have a bit of a lifestyle shift, and just be, understanding and accepting of that idea, and find the happiness in the daily, and that'll carry you on. We need to highlight the fact that you are such a positive role model to your kids. Earlier you said, oh my goodness, Dad. Your kid said, oh my goodness, Dad, I've never seen you this happy before. You actually love what you do. And dude, that is contagious. People vibe off that. The other night, Sunday night, I was on a call to prep for a clubhouse meeting with two other pizza people at 9 p.m. or 7 p.m. on a Sunday night. I get out of the room of my in-laws' library and they see me and they're like, "Are you working right now?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm talking about pizza." And they're like, "Oh." And I saw their face light up because any other time I talk about my job, they're just like, "Arr," right? But they see this positive, happy person doing what they do. And it's just like, damn, good for you.
It's definitely, it's, it's one of those things, man. I don't even know how to describe it. It's one of those things where people see your passion. You know, I'm a very passionate person about everything that I believe in. Okay. Um, but there's a difference between being passionate about something and something that just comes naturally. You know, you give me a script or you give me something, I'll jump into it and be 100% passionate about it if I support it. Right. But when you're actually doing something, and like I say to my kids all the time, I just said it to my son last night. I'm like, buddy, I got to prep, you know, tomorrow. You know, we can't do what we were going to do, but because I got to do this, this, and this. And he's like, okay, Dad. He goes, it takes a lot of work to run your company. And I'm like, yeah, but it's nonstop every single day. He goes, but you seem like you love it. And I'm like, I do love it. I do love it. Now, I'd be lying, Idra, if I were going to sit here and tell you that everything's a swan song, right? I mean, there's definitely days where I'm like, why haven't I taught somebody or why haven't I hired somebody to roll these dough balls out yet? You know, some of the biggest things I need to learn on that's on my vision board for this year is being able to let go certain things. You know, this is my baby, right? This is my fifth child, and it's very hard for me as I talk to 100 other pizza owners, and they're the same way. Business owners, the same thing. You have to strategically let go of certain things that are going to allow you to have better production in certain things. You know, when I'm cramping up and I can't feel my fingers anymore because I'm rolling up, you know, my 300th dough ball, you know, I have to be able to be like, what the hell, man? I got to let some of this go a little bit. I got to be able to, you know, my cousin's been chomping at the bit to do more, get more involved in the business. I got to be able to do something, you know, to help teach or learn so that I have continued success. But what it does come down to, you know, there is not a day that goes by that I am not like, I'm so proud of my company. I'm so proud of the life I'm making for myself now. And again, like I said, it's not that I didn't have success in the other ventures that I had, because I was very successful, but I truly bleed this company and everything about it. The good days, the bad days, the sweaty days when it's 140 degrees in front of the oven, you know, when it's 25 degrees out, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where, yes, I'm doing it, everything. Yes, it's my business and my company. But again, it's my business and my company, you know, and there's just something to be smile about that. You know what I mean?
Hell yeah. You are doing you, brother. Let's do some rapid fire questions. We already went over your flour and your oven. What tomatoes are you using?
So there's typically I use 7-Eleven. Any product the Stanislaus has is amazing. And I've used some other tomatoes. You know, the Biancos are amazing tomatoes. If I can't get them that often though, there's another canned tomato called Jersey Fresh, which is absolutely amazing. But something always brings me back to Stanislaus, and it is their consistency of their product. I'll tell you, you know, I've brought in the DOP tomatoes from Italy, you know, for my margarita pizzas. They're amazing, but the consistency sometimes is off. And I'll tell you that the Stanislaus product, whether it's, you know, Tomato Magic or whether it's 7-Eleven, the consistency that they bring in their product is just amazing. And I love it.
Toppings. What's your favorite topping or topping combinations?
I love what we call blop blop, which is sausage. I love to pinch the sausage and put it on any type of pizza, whether it's just, you know, sausage and ricotta or sausage and basil. I love the way the sausage, if you do it small enough and dollop it small enough, I love how it cooks in a wood-fired oven. It almost, you can do it in a home oven too at a high temp. It almost, overcooks the top of it, and it becomes a little bit crunchy while it still stays nice and soft on the bottom.
Yeah,
love that, bro. Anything with sausage on it that way, I'll love. And honestly, my favorite, and it may not, I'm gonna get hate mail for this, I'm sure, but the favorite thing I love to do with any pizza is just put a tiny pinch of sea salt on it. Just use a little bit of sea salt, not a lot. Just put a little on the finish. Just put a tiny bit of salt, tiny bit of sea salt. It just enhances every flavor you have on it. Enhances.
That's interesting. I don't like pizzas that I make that don't have pecorino romano. I feel like it's just the right kind of saltiness on it.
Yeah.
And it's more socially acceptable. No,
Sure.
I'm kidding. Yeah. I will add salt too to a pizza if I don't have pecorino romano on it. I agree with you.
For sure.
And if you had to describe your pizza in one sentence, how would you do that?
We are a neo-American style pizza that is soft and chewy, but has a nice firm texture on the bottom of the crust where you're still able to pick it up and don't have it fall apart on you when you pick it up.
All right. Final two questions.
Sure.
What is one mistake in pizza or business that people can avoid?
Great question. Don't overcomplicate things. And by saying don't overcomplicate things, I would tie that into be true to yourself and the product that you want to have. Don't overcomplicate things, meaning, you don't have to go out and if you're doing this professionally, or even if you're doing it at home, right? There's plenty of times I can remember doing a pizza party or a dinner party at home, and I felt like I had to have 75 different options, and I had to have 15 different types of toppings, and I had to have this cheese and that cheese. Same thing with business. Don't overcomplicate it. Hone in on something and do it really well, and do it over and over and over again, and enhance certain things here and there. But stick to that same core of what you're doing and be consistent with it. And then you can tweak things. I made the mistake early without honing in on my skill. I kept changing my dough. So I literally would change my dough, every other time I make dough, I change it. Well, I need to do this. I need to do that. And then my wife would be like, well, what's the difference between that dough and this dough? And I'm like, oh, crap. I don't know. Let me look at my notebook, because I do write everything down. But it's being consistent, sticking it out, working through the pros and cons of what you're doing. And then if it works, then you tweak a little bit of it. If you fail at it, then tweak it a little bit to see why you're failing or what you want to be. And I think the other clear-cut thing is be concise in what you want to do. Live your dream, do what you want to do and how you want to do it, but be concise in what you want to do and how you want to do it. If you want to be a restaurant owner, then work towards those goals to be a restaurant owner. If you want to do pop-ups and have a food truck, then work those goals to become and do pop-ups and a food truck. But educate yourself, learn through other people's mistakes, because the difference between now and when I first wanted to get into this 25 years ago is the books that are out there, is the internet. There are so many people that have so much great knowledge that can offer you so many things that will help you not make those mistakes that everybody else before you made.
Thank you. Thank you again for the shout out and real talk. I love learning from people's mistakes. I feel like I learned that for myself in 2015. It was like, I was at a training. It's my first sales job. And I just happened to go last, but in going last, I saw everyone role playing, and I got all of their critiques from the supervisors, and I was one of the only people to just nail that script down, learning from everyone's. And that was the point that clicked. I was like, oh shit, if I just pay attention to what everyone else is doing, like not obsessively, right?
Of
Not
course.
to where it like takes over my life, but like pay attention to the things that kind of matter and try not to make those mistakes, you can set yourself up.
There's something to be said for that, man. And I'll tell you that it's something that's taught, because a lot of times in what we do, whether it's a sales position, whether it's a manager's position, whether it's owning your own company, your ego gets in the way. And you have to be able to let down that ego, right? You have to be able to have somebody look you in the eye and say, you know what, your pizza isn't what I expected. And you have two reactions at that point. You could say, F off, go somewhere else. Or you could say, well, tell me about your experience and tell me why it didn't live up to your satisfaction or your standards. What were you expecting? But it takes that person to be able to look at whatever the scenario or situation is, to be able to do that. And not a lot of people can do that. So your scenario is one I lived a million times over, man. When I used to teach sales courses, I would have people making the same mistake over and over and over again, that we would basically tell them, the 30 people in front of them, we would tell them, don't do things this way. And what would they do? They'd get up and they would do things this way. You have to be able to look in the mirror and self-reflect and say, this is what I want to do. This is how we're going to do it. But take that ego down a notch.
I love that. Great point and so key. Final question. What do you want to leave the audience with today?
Man, well, first I want to thank you for this, man. I'm 100%. I mean it when I say you do so much for our industry, for the pizzaiolas that are in this industry, to the ones that are coming up that want to get in this industry. Having a voice like you have, allowing people like myself to come on and speak about what they do, it really does mean a lot. And what I want to tell everyone is there's a lot of issues. There's a lot of things for why we do or don't do certain things. There's a lot of hurdles, if you will. There's a lot of monetary attachments for why we can or can't do something. I'm not your stockbroker, but I will tell you to figure out if it's truly your passion and truly what you want to do. Stop working for somebody else, living their dream, collecting their money on their yacht or their plane or their Tesla or whatever it is, and figure out a way, if you really are passionate about it and this is something you really want to do, figure out a way to live you and do you and be successful with you. There's a million people out there. I was shocked as hell that on an airplane, I listened to Tony Gimignani on a podcast, and I messaged him, and I was shocked that when I landed from the plane, I got off and I had a reply back from Tony Gimignani messaged me back. Tony Gimignani messaged me back, right? I'm like, get the hell out of here. This ain't real, right? I hear Lars on a podcast, and I'm like, dude, this guy is exactly doing what I want to do. What do? I message him. I'm like, yeah, this guy's never going to answer me back. 20 minutes. Anything you need, bud. Here's my number. Message me, text me, call me. And I think that's the difference now, man, in this industry, is that we're not keeping or turning our pizza cans where the labels, or taking the labels off. We're an open book. And again, I say this to everybody because it was told to me, and I'll say it the same way. I could give you my pizza recipe note by note by note, and I could have Tony Gimignani's pizza recipe note by note by note. There is not a chance in hell that you will ever make my pizza recipe the way I make my pizza recipe, and the same thing for Tony Gimignani. May get close, but it's never going to be exactly the same. So what I mean by that is there's no reason why we wouldn't share what we do or how we do it, or the successes that we've had or the failures that we've had. There's a reason. And we all have to continue to work with one another to be successful, but it starts with you. And if you're not living your dream, working for you, being who you are, you're not doing anything but saying, shit, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have done that.
Damn, bro. I love it. Thank you for speaking to me, to the listeners. And really, I vibe so much with what you're doing. I vibe with a lot of things that you said, the over analyzing thing, the squirrel syndrome. And I feel like that's why we get the squirrel syndrome, meaning like, oh, like, look, shiny object, like, oh, I want to try that. And so I really love that you committed. As I think you haven't heard the episode yet, but Nicole Russell said, encouraged one of her friends to do it, to live pizza 10 toes down, this, and so meaning like live it, and like, you're doing it. So congrats to you. Congrats for being an example to me and to everyone that you touch. So thank you for being on the show.
No, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. And, I'm happy to call you friend, buddy. And hopefully we'll get to meet one day at Pizza Expo, or I'm coming out there and we're going to grab some pizzas together, buddy.